We are saying goodbye to Hurricane Imelda as most of the United States is above normal in temperatures for this upcoming weekend, but out west we are watching the first round of mountain snow and the hard freezes for the upcoming work week. Let's dive into all the details next here at the Weather Farm. As we say goodbye to Hurricane Imelda, this was the last advisory that was issued on Thursday afternoon. It has become post-tropical as it continues to move away from Bermuda. This will be the last that we talk about it here at the Weather Farm, but as of Thursday afternoon, it did have minimal Category 1 hurricane strength winds, but is expected to move well into the North Atlantic and become a tropical storm on Friday before dissolving into a tropical depression by the beginning of next week. And as we look out of the tropics for our next signs, we're watching an area here off the coast of Florida. This is associated with a remnant disturbance that has been left in the wake of the two hurricanes that have moved in this general area over the last week. So we are getting some convection and some heavy rainfall associated with this. Less than a 10% chance of this area developing anything tropical over the next 7 days. But we're watching out across the Atlantic as we have a weak disturbance in the central part of the Atlantic, but we're going to watch a wave that's expected to move off the African coast over the next 2 to 3 days. And as that wave moves off the coast of Africa, it is expected to interact with and then strengthen into a tropical wave as it continues its westward journey. Right now, the National Hurricane Center has given it a 30% chance of tropical development over the next 7 days. But back home, the big story that we are also monitoring is the above normal temperatures that we've been experiencing across the United States for the last 3 to 4 weeks, and that's led to widespread drought conditions across the eastern half of the United States, with some areas now impacted in an extreme drought, highlighted by those reds just north of Memphis, near land between the lakes, parts of West Virginia, even up into Maine, New Hampshire, and Vermont. This is definitely going to have an impact on the fall foliage and the colors that you're going to be seeing across this part of the country. Across the central plains, where we've had those storm systems come out of the Rockies and move up through the northern plains, we're experiencing minimal drought conditions, but out west, especially across parts of Arizona into New Mexico and into Texas, we are experiencing severe and extreme droughts. So is there any rainfall or precipitation for those impacted areas expected over the next few days? Well, let's look at the upper air patterns. And this is what's really dominated across the eastern two-thirds of the United States over the last 3 to 4 weeks. Area of high pressure has kept warm, dry conditions, and out west we've seen troughs move in, but then they've quickly ejected to the northeast and brought their precipitation up through the Dakotas. But as we get into early next week, there is a sign that an even more potent system is going to try to move through the Canadian provinces. This high pressure, though, is not going to give way, and so it's going to remain up across parts of Ontario into Quebec as we rebound with warmer air across the central plains as we get to the middle of next week. So as we begin our day on our Friday, we're watching an area of low pressure here in southern Nevada. It's bringing some scattered showers out west all the way up through Idaho. We do have another area of low pressure through northern Wyoming. That's expected to move off to the northeast and associated with the cold front that will be moving through the area over the weekend. Across parts of Florida, with the remnants of those tropical waves, that's bringing scattered rainfall and heavy rainfall at that across the east coast of Florida down towards Miami. But out in the northeast, we have an area of high pressure that's continuing to bring warm, dry conditions and stable air for the first full weekend of October. So any of those fall festivals that you have planned in your local community, the weather is going to look great across the Northeast, into the Mid-Atlantic, and even the Ohio Valley to attend those festivals this weekend. In fact, the Storm Prediction Center for our Friday has very little area highlighted under a risk of severe weather. The main threat is going to be those afternoon thunderstorms as they pop along the Gulf through Florida and then out west through Nevada into Idaho and Montana. And as we go into our Saturday morning, that low pressure is now moved out of Nevada into South Dakota. Behind it, we're watching some rainfall. But again, we're going to experience some windy conditions across the northern Rockies over our Saturday into Sunday as we get cooler air just off to the north of the Canadian border. That's going to move down south into the northern Rockies Saturday into Sunday and bring the chance for our first mountain snows across the area. Out across Florida, we do have that area of low pressure becoming a little more organized, not tropical in nature, but enough to bring heavy amounts of rain. And we're getting a little bit of disturbance here in the Gulf that will bring some heavy rain to parts of Louisiana. And even on our Saturday, the best chance of severe weather is going to be out west from Utah through Wyoming, Idaho, into southern Montana. It may impact a few college football games or high school football games. So as we put our map into motion, we're going to watch on our Friday the rain out west across the Rockies. That's going to continue to organize as we go into our Saturday, and here comes that snow in those higher elevations. Snow levels in Montana could drop to as low as 4,000 or 5,000 feet, but that low is going to race off to the northeast and bring heavy amounts of rain to Manitoba, Ontario, and eventually into Quebec as we get to the beginning of next work week. So if we look at our precipitation over the next 5 days, we're going to see a swath of precipitation through Nevada, up through Wyoming, Montana, into the Dakotas, and then up through Canada. Heavy rain across the southeast, parts of Louisiana, especially down by New Orleans. You could be impacted by heavy rainfall over the next 5 days. And with that tropical remnants off the east coast of Florida, we're going to have heavy amounts of rain all the way up through the Carolinas. We take a look at our precipitation out west. We could see widespread 1 to 2 inches of rain across southern Montana, northeastern Wyoming, through the Dakotas by the time we get to our Monday morning. And across Florida, we could see 5 to 6 inches along the east coast, and that heavy rainfall could stretch up to places like Savannah, even towards Charleston, where you could see a couple of inches of rain by your Monday morning. Out across the delta of Louisiana and some of those southern parishes, we could see rainfall exceeding 4 to 6 inches in those areas that are highlighted by that yellow. And back out west, as I mentioned, we are anticipating our first mountain snowfall of the season. Across parts of western Montana, we could see a few inches down as low as 4,000 and 5,000 feet. We can even see some trace elements of snow down in those low valleys across the parts of the mountains of western Wyoming in those highest elevations up above 9,000 feet. Snowfall amounts could be in excess of 1 foot of snow. And if we take a look at our temperatures over the weekend, we're going to watch areas of warmth with 90s across Texas. And those 90s are going to extend all the way up through the Dakotas, even towards Iowa. Des Moines, you could be pushing 90 for your Friday. 80s through the Great Lakes and Ohio Valley, 70s to the northeast. Out west, we are cooling down with that cooler air beginning to move in, that trough digging in. Temperatures here are going to be held down into the 50s and our 60s for our Friday highs, and it's going to be more of the same for our Saturday, where temperatures are going to be in the 50s and 60s across Idaho and western Montana, 80s and 90s surging well north. Minneapolis, you could be touching 90 degrees, which is unthinkable for this first weekend of October. Out across the northeast, temperatures here again are in the 70s. Where we have the heavy rainfall along the coasts here, temperatures will be held down in the 70s and low 80s. And it's just not Montana and Wyoming that is expecting to get snow. We're going to see snow through the higher elevations of British Columbia and Alberta, and we're even going to see across parts of northern Saskatchewan into northern Manitoba. We could see anywhere from 2 to 5 centimeters of snow with this upcoming system that will be moving through. A sure sign that colder weather is in store for the lower 48, and the snowpack is building across parts of the northern climate. And I want to take a look at this map right now. This is our forecasted Monday low temperatures. So where those areas we see that snow beginning to fall on our Sunday across Montana and Wyoming, you could be waking up on Monday to your first hard freeze with widespread 20s and even some teens possible across this part of the United States. Zooming in a little closer on those temperatures, places like Bozeman, you could be at 29, Butte 27, Cody, Wyoming, you could be 33 degrees. Idaho Falls, you're going to be about 38. Maybe a frost is in store for you. But we see these lighter colors here indicating temperatures that are going to be down around 20 degrees Fahrenheit for our Monday morning. As we go into next week, though, where we saw the snow across the west, temperatures are going to rebound as we get warm air beginning to flow back to the north. We're going to watch that little boundary begin to stall across the Ohio Valley. That's going to bring a chance of rain on our Tuesday. But as that low and that trough continues to move east, we're going to see rain for the northeast as we get towards our Wednesday. And temperatures on our Monday are still going to be warm out ahead of that front, cooling down into the 50s and 60s across the Dakotas, where you will have been in the 90s over the weekend. And that cooler air continues to move across the northern tier as we get into our Tuesday. We are rebounding slightly across the Dakotas and Nebraska with highs in the 70s, but we still have 80s and 90s across the deep south. And that cool air continues to make its way east on our Wednesday, with high temperatures across Pennsylvania and New York in the low to mid 60s, 50s across parts of Michigan. But out west, where we saw the snowfall and those cold temperatures over the weekend, we are warming back up very quickly. And those 90s and 80s are even making their way back into the desert, where Phoenix, you could be near 95 degrees for your Wednesday. And this is all due to the upper level pattern that's going to persist. As we get towards next weekend, we're going to see that ridge building back across the central plain. Out west, we are watching a trough, and that trough's going to remain offshore. But it is this ridge, and it's this persistent ridge that has been here all during the last half of September into October that really isn't budging. We have troughs that are trying to move in. They're going up and over the ridge and impacting the northeast, but we really don't see this ridge budging anytime soon. As we get towards the middle of October, we expect it to remain in place across the central part of the United States. That's going to keep above normal temperatures in your forecasts from places like Texas all the way through the Dakotas into Iowa. And we know it's only a matter of time. As we watch these troughs dig across Canadian provinces, it is a matter of time before one of them dives south into the lower 48. And we see that here with our 8 to 14 day outlook across most of the United States with above normal temperatures for that second weekend of October into the following week. Where we have those troughs out in the Pacific Northwest, below normal temperatures are expected. And we are seeing the western half of the United States expected to have above normal precipitation for that second week. And in the eastern half, we are expected to continue with our drought conditions with below normal precipitation expected over the next 8 to 14 days. Now, I did mention that snowpack was building over the northern climates, and I want to take a look at our projected snow depth as of this coming Monday morning. we're going to see snow across most of northern slope of Alaska. A few inches is possible, but as we get down to those mountainous regions towards Anchorage, down towards Juneau, we're seeing in those higher mountainous areas a good snowpack building. Across the Yukon and Northwest Territories, snowfall in the amount of 5 to 10 centimeters on the ground is likely. But even some of the northern islands in Nunavut, like Banks Island and Cornwall Island, we're seeing snowfall beginning to build across this part of North America. And as we go through the month of October, that snow depth is going to continue to move further south. So as it gets further south and we get those jabs of colder air coming down towards the lower 48, that's going to allow that cold air to persist, stay intact and not modify as it moves further south. But speaking of Alaska, I do want to jump up here and take a look at the weather pattern because you are getting impacted by round after round of storm systems. As they move in from the west, we're seeing rain mainly across the western part of Alaska, but as it moves towards Fairbanks and towards the north slope, that rain changes to snow. And over the next week, we're going to see several rounds of precipitation move through Alaska, bringing rainfall to the lower levels and snowfall for the interior and north slope. And in terms of our temperatures, it's across the north slope where we see the coldest conditions, where temperatures are in the teens for your afternoon highs, falling to single digits or even below zero at night across this part of the area. As we make our way towards Fairbanks and the interior, temperatures here are cooling into the 30s and 40s during the upcoming work week. And across the Kenai Peninsula, temperatures again remaining rather cool for this time of the year, 30s and 40s, nearing 50 in some locations. Well, we thank you for joining us here at the Weather Farm. We hope you have a wonderful Friday. We hope you have a great weekend. Get out there, enjoy those fall colors, enjoy those fall activities, get those pumpkin patches going, and we will see you again on Monday.